Chapter 11. Main character's name is Roman. Since we have to keep talking, Rob, have you ever gotten the chance to look out at dark space? There's still some time on my air reserves, and I would like to enjoy the view a bit longer. Yes, once. Have you heard of glass tops? The tourist traps? I nearly piloted one once, but luckily I found a different job. Despite the frequent solitude, I do like people, but tourists are too often something else. Well, I doubt we would have been better, but the setup was a little different. It was my wife's idea for the honeymoon, and I did think it was silly at first, but it was amazing. We both grew up near cities, and while it never bothered me looking up and only seeing stars, she wanted to see what more was there. That is one of her qualities I most enjoy. Anyway, she had always wanted to make a trip somewhere without the light pollution, but never had the opportunity. When we were just talking about honeymoon ideas, really dreams, neither of us took too seriously. I said she can go as big as she wanted, and that's what she wanted. I wouldn't think any of those ships would be, comfortable for a honeymoon. Glass tops are smaller transport ships where the top is almost entirely a transparent material with a few dozen seats beneath. The pilot takes in the dark space, cuts the engines and the lights so everyone can just look. Then they start asking questions of the pilot, because fairly often they are the only crew. And you had better know every constellation and nebula because, invariably, there is someone that will correct you. This was different. There was actually a small swarm of ships, almost like hotel suites, that were controlled by a command module. We left as one, but then disconnected so the thrusters on each could be controlled independently. That way we could turn to face whatever part of the universe we wanted, and have some privacy. With a chuckle, Rob continues, "Yeah, that too. We were out there floating for a couple days before being picked up and brought back to Earth. Did you hide your fear of spaceflight from her? I don't know those ships, but it must have been stressful to only have thrusters and I assume limited power." Roman, I would still never choose to fly in space, but with her hand in mine, there's no room for fear in me. Over the years, I've arrived at many conclusions about Rob, from knowing he can tell any story as convincingly as real life, to his being a master of throwing sarcasm and insults back with the best of them. That he is a romantic as well is far from surprising. I almost feel sorry for you. Because I don't have a wife? That comment of his was rather odd, especially with his very sincere tone, so I have to get what clarification I can. No, well, yeah, that is there, but what I mean is that you'll probably never quite know that specific feeling. I mean, I've never heard any fear in you. You seem to be one of those people that can always keep moving forward, no matter the situation. You don't need anyone else to feel safe like that, but I guess you can make others feel that way, so things balance out in the end. First, 2 pages or so for Chapter 11 of Letter from Catherine. When thinking about how I wanted to have I just realized I'm looking at the wrong camera, turn that one off. Nice camera there, not so nice camera there. When I wanted to come up with some way to talk about the book, that really is the moment in the book I think is best to just read from and convey. I think that it's... I mean, there are many good scenes in here, don't get me wrong, but I think that's one of the best. And also, and here it looks better there, this cover image, which actually the background is... Oh, yeah, I actually put it in the book so everyone can know. NGC 3324. That's what the background is. I think it's a beautiful image as well. But when I needed to come up with a cover for the book, I decided to use a Hubble image, and this one was perfect because in this conversation, the black silhouette down there, that's Roman. He is lying back on the outside of his ship. That's why there was a mention of his air reserves. He's lying back and just looking at the universe, looking at existence. And I think that's a perfect image to go with it because of how we have this... Here, I'll turn off that and even me. Look at that nice... It's almost like a horizon line. It's not, clearly. But it is so much like that. There's you could see somebody lying back in the horizon of mountains in the distance while they're just looking at the stars. But here, the mountain is the edge of a nebula, and then, I mean, there's still plenty of gas and dust, but it's, now different, and just thought that was a beautiful image to use there, and it's that chapter, for that much of it at least, it changes. Roman does have to get up shortly after, but he's lying on his back and just enjoying it all and talking with his friend, Rob. who is his controller, because Roman is a pilot. He is, in fact, a courier pilot, hence why it's a letter from Catherine. That's one of the things that he's carrying with him. And it's just, he has kind of an adventure during about 3 days, as I recall it takes. Might be 3.5 days that the book lasts. And it's just like 3-4 days in his life. He's had an interesting life. He's a veteran, a very experienced pilot. He owns his own ship, which is kind of special. A lot of pilots, especially after the war, they didn't have their own ships, so they'd have to lease, rent, whatever, or just work for a larger company that had ships for them to use. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to work for a different company. He did rent and he did lease as he needed to, or he'd borrow. Some places would be like, yeah, we need you to make this shipment. We got the ship, we just need the pilot. He did that for a while, but then he got his own. He got his own ship. It's called the Nancy Grace. And he enjoys it all. He is good, and exactly like Rob describes there, he is somebody that he can just keep moving forward. He would know this. He's a combination of lucky and good. And he appreciates both, and he tries to be as good as he can at what he does. But sometimes, though, it still pushes him. The chapter before this, actually, so chapter 10, does relay a story where, well, he knew what he was doing was dumb. But he had to do what he had to do. It's actually a flashback, though, for clarity there. I think it's a good book. It is, of the 5 books I've self-published so far, it is definitely one I would recommend. And of the 2 Catherineverse stories, my science fiction universe, it is the better of the 2. At least in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. Hey, I enjoyed it. It's not horrendously long. It's only about 22 chapters. It is broken up into some sections, and mainly they're just labels in the table of contents. I know that's not in focus, but because it starts off, you get 4 chapters with him on a space station. Then let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of him on the Nancy Grace, his ship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for the the real adventure portion. I'm not going to spoil that, even though, yeah, it's in the table of contents, you'll see. And then the last 2 chapters are him actually on Earth. His route just takes him, it's just between the space station, well, so that you can see my finger, from here and Earth, and he just goes back and forth. That's all. 2 days to travel, 1 to 1, 2 days to travel back, and 1 day each for moving things onto the ship, off the ship, all that. So he gets 1 day off a week typically, but it's for those 2 days. He's a pilot, but he can basically just do whatever he wants. He doesn't need to be constantly at the controls. It's his life, but it's also, things have been changing for him recently. If you read it, I do want to say this, because it's technically a spoiler, but at the same time, as I look back on the story, I think I failed to adequately describe it. He was somebody that would get up, go to work, get off of work, do whatever his hobby is, and go to bed. That would be it. That's all he would do. And there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle, but because of that flashback story from chapter 10, he was forced to take a break. His ship was damaged. He needed it to be repaired. His ship name is the Nancy Grace. I don't remember if I specified that. And it was so damaged, it took months to repair, and this forced him out of that routine, where now he's actually, living a life. It's like he's been making friends, and, actually trying to have plans with some of these friends. So, one thing that he talks about in there is he's decided, since he is going back and forth, he can get things from Earth, including, food. He'll get produce and ingredients and such, and every day off, he'll just arrange for his friends to come over for them to have dinner together and do, a game night or whatever. It doesn't matter, but it's he's actively deciding to have a life like that, to have a social life. And it's not even he's going to reduce his time. No, he will make the time in that 1 day to have that life, which before he didn't. He wasn't making that effort. He just was He enjoyed his work, and that's all he was doing. So, yeah, I want to share that because I could believe somebody reading it might not pick up on that. I mean, it is something, while writing it, I realized that, but I reread it a few months ago, and I realized, it's not super clear there. So I do want to make that point, because there is, essentially, the time that it had to take off humanizes him a bit, where he's seeing the value in those things, in such things as having friends, as connecting with people, and also, not just having friends, but just acquaintances, where it's like, yeah, I know the guy. I'll invite him over for dinner. He's a good guy. I don't know him that well, but that's okay. It's like he'd still do that, having fun with them and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm doing a good job selling the story, but no, I do think I somehow was lucky and got to do a good job with it. Hopefully the next one will be just as good or better. Hopefully better, most of that, but I'll take just as good. That'll still satisfy me. All right, see you next time.